And a very warm welcome back to all of you. I'll just let everybody get settled down. I know there's still a few people coming from coffee. It's always a good time to meet new friends, meet some business acquaintances, network a little bit, maybe do a little bit of business. But we're grateful that you're all back here because we have a very, very interesting session. Our opening session really laid the foundation for what is going on in the industry, looking at policy, looking at the opportunities that are there. But this session is really going to examine very, very closely the opportunities and the challenges that are for the bioeconomy. I think we heard some great words of cautious optimism earlier this morning, but without a doubt, I think the opportunities and the prospects for this industry are simply huge. When we look at population growth, we look at demand for energy and demand for products, and also the disposable income of consumers to come. So there's huge opportunity. And I think when there can be products and services out there that have added value, that actually can make money, save the economy, and do good all in one, it is certainly a win-win situation. This panel now is going to really look at the bioeconomy paradigm, the opportunities and challenges, and continue on the foundation, what we heard this morning. Let me introduce you quickly to our panel, and then we'll get right down to business. Just to my left here, Frank Goebel joins us. He's a member of the board for Biotechnology Research and Information Network, B.R.A.I.N, B.R.A.I.N as they say. So he'll tell us what's going on there. Right beside Frank, we have Giulia Gregori from Novamont, responsible for strategic planning. Delighted to see you, Giulia. Thank you so much for joining us. Over on the very far left, your right, actually, Pentti Hyttinen, the Director General for Metsähallitus, is joining us. Thank you. Nice to see you, Pentti. And also Teresa, Ribera, the Director of the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations. Now, let me quickly introduce you to our chairman for this session. Here he is, in the middle, holding court, ready to go. And he is a gentleman really widely considered as the father of European bioeconomy. So we're thrilled that he's here. He's the former director of the EU Commission and advisor to the German government for bioeconomy. A very warm welcome for Christian Patermann and the entire panel. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome, and thank you very much, Chairman, for your very friendly and kindly words. So, Excellencies, friends and colleagues, welcome. This is an investment summit. That means we have elements of an industrial stakeholder meeting, a big global sustainability and circular event, we have an RTD element, and we have a general industrial forum element. I need not to introduce you too intensely into the depth of the old and the new paradigm, which, just to be short, based on biological resources with the special features of renewability, a certain climate friendliness, as Mr. Struchtay has shown us, elements of the circularity. Mr. Prime Minister, in Kalundborg in the year 2002, we had the Kalundborg Declaration, which was introducing the circularity in Europe. I wished that we should keep that in mind. It was a Nordic proposal. So the circular economy is not at all new, just a side remark. And then number fourth, the potentials for new innovative properties with Marcus Wallenberg has very well shown in the Stora Enso movie. And I don't want to stress too much in this paradigm discussion the openness of the bioeconomy for converging technologies. We started with a knowledge-based bioeconomy in Europe, and this is more actual than ever if you look on the tremendous potential still untapped in the digital revolution. It was mentioned today, the blockchain technology for the food development, etc., for new materials for 3D printing, implantats in the medical services, neural networks, new packaging, etc. You all know that because you are converted. But what about the rest? What about the so-called concerned and interested citizen, the man in the street, the European taxpayer, and also the investor? Commissioner Moedas a few weeks ago in his speech on the Bioeconomy Day in Brussels said that the potentials are visible, but they have not been reaching the minds of the people, and they have not been understood widely. And we should keep that in mind. And that is the bridge to our second part, not only the opportunities, but also the challenges. The bioeconomy, and this has been said by quite a few people this morning, is complex. It is very complicated, and there's nothing more complicated than than life in the world. But my dear friends, the sustainability is also very complex, and it's not easy to understand by many people. So complex technologies, the relevance to sustainability, the circular economy, the climate global change processes, that doesn't make it easier. It's embedded into this big picture. And last but not least, also with respect to the complexities, we have regulations. We have in Europe, at least in Europe, not at all always plausible, but very fragmented regulatory landscape. So that's the first point, complexities and complications. And then don't forget, the impacts of the bioeconomy are not immediate. They are midterm. They are frequently long-term. With other words, we have also to cope with larger costs. So the number of risks is quite big with which we have to cope. Bigger than in compatible areas like digitalization, automotives, etc. And we have a third point, don't forget that. We still have to work on getting a very large societal acceptance. The missing social common appreciation, or what is bio, is still there, or it's just mixed up with organic food, full stop. And that's not the case. Now, dear friend, I want to put one phrase also in the middle of our deliberations from the very beginning, in spite of all the global helicopter views, which are fascinating and important and necessary. And that is that the single citizen and investor will always ask the question, what is the bioeconomy good for me? We have to understand that, and we have to accept that, in spite of all the other relevances which are there and which we really need to stress. So don't forget that. We need to bridge that gap, new ways for communication, also of financing. Last week, the European Commission had a seminar in Brussels with the European Investment Bank, and I hope that we hear a little more about that maybe a little later. They are going to have a so-called thematic investment platform which will be contained in an innovative financial holding fund within the Horizon 2020 problem and project. And the first topic for this thematic investment platform was chosen last week, and it is the circular bioeconomy. That is the question we are going to discuss also. Is that a good idea? Is that valid? Because such a thematic investment platform should refer to grants, to loans, soft and convertible ones, venture capitals, venture debts, equities, guarantees, etc. The aim is to reduce the perceived risk by investors, to facilitate the crowding in capital, private capital, but also validating new business models. And that is the reason why we have here today very excellent panelists coming from industry and from think tank. And I have asked every one of them to present within 2 to 3 or maybe 4 minutes their ideas with respect to the opportunities first. Then we will have a round of discussions with you, 10 to 15 minutes, and then also on the challenges. And then we will have another round with you, so that we want strongly to involve the audience in these practical questions after we had this fantastic helicopter view on where the bioeconomy stands in the competition of various strategies to cope with the challenges of tomorrow. Now, I would start with Giulia Gregori and ask her for the floor, and then Frank Goebel has the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to be here and to hear this important and interesting view on bioeconomy. We think that we all agree that bioeconomy is a real opportunity to change our model, the model of production, the model of consumption, and above all, the model of building partnership between different sectors and different stakeholders, overcoming barriers and sharing culture and know-how. And we think that bioeconomy is an opportunity to think of the Europe that we want and that we can be, with the ambitious goals of sustainable development goals in mind. In the specific sector that I represent, that is the bio-based industry, so the industry that starts from renewable raw materials and by scaling up innovative technologies, we develop new products, new biochemicals, new bioplastics, new biomaterials. In our specific sector, the main opportunities that we see is the reindustrialization of industrial sites that are no more competitive in Europe, and that thanks to the innovative technology developed in Europe can be a new productive site able to produce new products. Here in Finland, we have important case study, important example, and I want to share with you one important case that we developed in Italy, in northern Italy. We built up this flagship plant starting on an old site built by a Japanese company, Ajinomoto, who formerly produced lysine with the biotech process, and developing a new biotech process and working together with people who used to work there in the former plant, we really were able in short time to build a flagship plant starting from sugars and developing one for butanediol, that is a chemical really important for Europe and for the chemical sectors. The second point is the development of sustainable new value chain, especially with the agri-sector, with farmers in rural areas. Also in this area, we have important example. We are developing in Italy important example with a different way of building partnership and agreement between industry and farmers, where farmers in rural area are not seen just as producer or supplier of biomass, but as a partner with the full knowledge of the different territories, of what is good or what is not good for that territories, and then together with them develop a business model where they are part also of the developing of new products that can be returned in agriculture at the end. The third point is products seen as a solution for environmental and social problems. So products, materials, design or eco-design in a way that can really contribute to decarbonize our planet. And in this sense, also, we have an interesting case that we can share you later on bioplastics in Italy as a way to divert organic waste from landfill and to transform it in high-quality compost that can return to soil as a carbon sink storage. And the last point, the last opportunity, I think that in this sector, we built a different way to collaborate with the public and private sector, with industry, research, and institution. And I can say that the public-private partnership on bio-based is a young experience, is a new experience, but it's really important and is and develop powerful tool, information, and data for our sector.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. You have 4 points. The revitalization of old industrial sites, which is nothing to do with rural areas. It can also be in urban areas. You then put very clear the identification of sustainable new value chains, which can be in rural or other areas as well, but mainly in rural. You then have the farmers' cooperation also within PPP plus. And then you have the last point, the more global contribution to the decarbonization efforts on the planetary limits and the planetary levels. Thank you very much. Frank Goebel from the German company B.R.A.I.N AG was accompanying this company in its only list to become member of the German exchange, of the German Börse last year, the only biotech company which was listed last year. So I'm very happy that he will tell us about his experiences. Frank, you have the floor.
Thank you. Happy to do so. So there was a lot of good points, and rather than reporting or repeating some of them, I just tried to give a bit of a view of what we are doing, and by explaining what we're doing from a practical standpoint, you will see that these are the real opportunities. So you need to define when we talk about opportunities, of course, the technology we provide effectively enables bioeconomy. And bioeconomy enables the transformation of industry. So that is a big point you have raised. And when I now look at what this is about and speak about opportunities, I think it's interesting to see what an investor will feel when he is asked to invest in B.R.A.I.N, for instance. So what are his opportunities? And clearly the opportunities there lie in the business and the equity story. And just a couple of examples. We are, as Chris mentioned, we went public in February 2016. We had a market cap of 150 million euros at that point in time. We increased to roughly 400 million euros at today's values. That shows that there is clearly interest in those stories. And why is there interest in those stories? Because our technologies, our products can make customer products more sustainable. So we can reduce waste in the production. We can make food products more healthy. And just to give you a bit of examples there, one of our big projects in the past has been to come up with the first low-temperature enzyme which is used in detergents. So we were the ones who sourced this from our own bioarchive. So an enzyme which enables you to lower the temperature with the same washing output. So the same cleanliness of your laundry at much lower temperatures. So why is this important? Because it is important for the houseman and the housewife because it can save energy. It is important for the industry because it's a new product. You can differentiate yourself from others. And our customer clearly had taken advantage of that. It is important for the overall society and the economic system. And this is something where if you are able to have these innovative, disruptive products, which are not just green labeled products, which really are efficient and change the dynamics of how the product works or the processes, how products are produced, that is the opportunity investors will see. So that is the uniqueness of the equity story. And today's example of what is also public, we have a project called Dolci from the Italian word suite, where we develop new innovative sweeteners and sweet enhancers. So we source bio-based ingredients which will reduce the sugar content in products without losing taste. So we reduce the salt content in products without losing taste. And why is this so important? Because a customer will not accept a product which is not tasty, and he will not accept to have the same carbonated soft drink with a slightly different, less juicy taste or less sugary taste. And this is so important to enable bio-based solution for these products because the cost of the health-related costs of too much sugar, too much salt, too much fat are obviously known. And with our products, we not only serve the industry, we not only serve the customer, but we also serve the overall society by reducing health-related costs in that example. And I could go on, and I have made much more examples here, but maybe I have to stop because of my 2 to 4 minute time limit.
Very well said. Thank you very much. Very interesting example of the Dolce Vita, of the bioeconomy for the future. Thank you very much. Now we have Teresa Ribera from the National Institute of Sustainable Development of an International Corporation in Paris. She's a think tank boss. So I'm very happy that we will have some impetus also, from these independent thinking power from Paris. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. That's a difficult position after the comment, but I'm going to come back to a little bit, apologies for that, to the helicopter view, because I think that that's also part of my role. 4 messages, probably very simple, but I think that it is important to come back to the fundamentals too. The first message, it's timely, it's a good opportunity, it is officially stated. And we don't have to diminish that it is officially stated. We've got a very important global agenda that is changing around the Agenda 2030, the Climate Paris Agreement, the SDGs, and so on. And even if governance and economics are not linear anymore, if they have ever been, it is important that there is political leadership stating that we need this change to happen. My second message is that the drivers or the needs are pretty much in the air, in the atmosphere, in the environment of what it is demanded. Climate, biodiversity, soils, references to carbon cycle, to soils preservation, to a competition on what and why we use soils for something or some other things. What does the the ecosystem services mean, and what type of food security we can ensure, how we build resilience, adapt to climate change, mitigate, preserve ecosystems. What does this mean, nature-based solutions, in order to prevent future risk, or what type of green infrastructures, incentives we can build, green services we can provide, or green products we can offer. That's the type of principles, needs, demands that come from the society. This is a great opportunity for this type of investment-oriented summit. The third message is that this implies a very interesting, crowded boat of new players in this discussion. For a very long time, it was a question of activists. It became in the official political agendas, both cities, national governments, regional governments, global governance. And then it has become a mainstream thinking or mainstream desire in the industrial side of the business, but also in the financial side of the business. I come from Paris. We've got 3 very interesting days around the Climate Finance Summit being convened by President Macron. Capital markets, insurance, and reinsurance players, long-term investors, they are shifting, and they will need to identify where to invest their money in a conservative manner, but also in the type of context where this money is being profitable and accepted by the people, by the societies. And I would say that the governments are trying to do their best in terms of giving political guidance to the economic systems, so fiscal incentives or a publicly driven development finance. But the answers are not fully still there. But I say, there are many interesting things happening we shouldn't be missing, including at the European level. You were commenting on some ideas being raised at the European Investment Bank, but we could also wonder what it is going to happen with the common agriculture policy for the time to come and the allocation of public budgets at the European and at the member state levels in the times to come. And my fourth main message in this opportunities first round is that this is a learning process for everybody. I think that this ecosystemic approach also applies to this learning process. You better than anyone can identify what, why, how, and what are the risks, not forgetting what Robert Constanza insisted on: social ground and ecological ceiling. Otherwise, we could be making mistakes.
Thank you very, very much. I very much hope that when you said, you know, the the member states are doing the best, and we all know the rest then, that we will end up like Mr. Chernobyl told us some time ago to ask how. But very important point that you make reference to the agriculture policies of the European Union, because there will be hundreds of billions of euros which might be allocated in the right way or in the wrong way. I'm sorry to say that, and that is something where one should really appeal to the Commission and to the member states to really do the right, to make the right decisions. We now have Pentti Hyttinen, a man who studied in the United States, also worked in Brussels, and is now a very active player in the forestry management of Finland. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm representing the state-owned forests in Finland, which is 1/3 of the surface area in Finland. And also I have a mandate from the EUSTAFOR organization, which is the European State Forest Organization. And I'm sitting in the board of that. And that means that I'm actually representing 1/3 of the forest lands in Europe. So it's a big responsibility. So this is to say that regarding whatsoever the investment is, the role of state forests is important, and the role of public is important. And concerning Metsähallitus, my organization, our ownership policy generated by the government of Finland says that we should not operate as an investor in industries, but we should create a good platform for investors, and we should practice sustainable and economically efficient forestry and provide a favorable operational environment for investors. So this is the basic element of our work. And maybe if I tell our new strategy, it gives you the overall view on how we think we can attract investors. In the strategy of Metsähallitus, the vision sentence is that we want to be a forerunner in bioeconomy in its multiple forms. And there are 4 main lines or key elements on it. One is by managing the state-owned forest and water areas, we aim at maximizing the overall benefits of the society in the long run over generations. So this is the welfare aspect in our strategy. The other thing is social responsibility. We have to promote the development of the regions in Finland, and we should aim at increasing the opportunities for employment and income generation, especially in rural areas. Third point in our strategy is we have to follow the principles of ecological sustainability. And our ambitious aim in this sense is that we are aiming at stopping the negative development of biodiversity. And it is globally very important strategic goal. And finally, the fourth point in our strategy is to take the full benefit of digitalization so that we use the new modern technology in our own operations, and we offer services for people taking the benefits of new technology in all our services. So to conclude this short introduction, I would like to emphasize that in attracting investors and investments, it's now important to have especially social acceptability of investments very high on agenda. Of course, we have to have also the environmental acceptability and the economic acceptability. But to build a good platform for investments, we have to deal more and more with people, a bit more with insects, and even a bit less with trees and timber. So that's my introduction, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. That gives us a good clue, you know, how broad your portfolio is, not just the tree, as you said, but it also shows the portfolio of the societal engagement which you are planning. So, summing up, we are in a transformation phase also of societies, if we like it or not. And that means if an investor, if an investment company, if a private equity manager, or even a state funder is doing something, he is part of the changing society. That is very important. And that should be the guiding principle of our deliberations for the future, because then that is a world of today which is different from it was 20 years ago. And that would make it probably easier to cope with the complexities, including SD goals, including circular economy, COP processes, etc. I open the floor now for about 8 to 10 minutes question time for you in the audience. You do it in the same way as before. If there is a question, lift up your arm and introduce yourself, and then put the brief question, because I want to give the chance to as many people as possible. Oh boy. Oh, there's a lady here. Don't be too shy. Okay, next one.
Karina Puurunen from Pöyry. I'd like to know, in the spirit of bioeconomy, what is your New Year's resolution or revolution, if you like?
Who wants to give an answer? Pentti?
So I'm not good in making any promises for New Year, but anyway, I would say that in Metsähallitus we are trying to think the term of bioeconomy in a very broad sense, so that even a hotel investment in Lapland is to be taken as a bioeconomy investment. It is promoting the use of forest lands for hiking and getting more healthy, let's say, health benefits from forests. So that is something we are putting a bit more effort than earlier.
Teresa?
Thank you. I think that Saint Lucia comes before the three kings. No, how do we say that in Spanish? In Spain, we do not give gifts in the Christmas day, but the 6th of January. So that comes after Saint Lucia and Los Tres Reyes Magos. So I come later for your Christmas gift for this new year. I think that there are a couple of very important things that we can do in and for Europe. And I think that Europe is quite systemic in the world for the time being and for the time to come. And we should be much more conscious of that approach. The first thing is that the European Commission has just opened for public comments its proposal on an European adaptation plan on climate. And I think that it could be very important that one of the messages coming up from that is that nature-based solutions, a different type of industrial approach is important and needs to be combined. It's not just, even if it is very important, the traditional ecological approach in terms of biodiversity, spaces and species, but also in terms of the industrial challenges we may need to develop, as Giulia was commenting at her earlier comments. And that drives me into the much more broader approach. I think that Europe will be facing a critical year, 2018, in order to identify what we want to be when we grow up, so to say, in the next decade, in a world that it is quite complex. And I think that a well-shaped, consistent approach in terms of bioeconomy, sustainable and ecological grounded is a good bet that deserves a much more public space in the political agenda and in the public discussions, and that could be a good driver to facilitate the identification of business opportunities and innovative approaches.
Next question.
Sir.
My name is Hans Fredrik Wohn. I come from Norwegian University of Life Sciences, and I have a comment and a question. It's been really inspiring to be here this morning and also after the coffee break, listen to the introductions. But I wonder, is there an elephant in the room? The two ex-prime ministers, they emphasized the importance of being able to deliver. And I wonder, is it really possible to have investments in the scale we are talking about in order to have the bioeconomy realized without a real and efficient global price on emissions from use of fossil resources? Isn't that really what we need in order to get this going? And that, I guess, is maybe the most challenging task for the global community to deliver on.
Thank you. Who wants to give an answer? Well, I'm going to try to answer you at least, and then please do comment. I think if you look on the picture of an elephant is a very nice animal and a very intelligent one. Don't forget that. I think that when we are looking on the potentials and we leave a decision to have settled all the global problems, that has never been the case in human history. We were always doing work. We were always trying to go in parallel, etc. And from my humble observation all over Europe, the industries all over the world, and in particular also in Asia, are delivering already many more bio-based products than we know, and then which are made known for a variety of reasons. We have indications, for example, in Europe, that in the chemical industry, sometimes the word bioeconomy is not wanted for a variety of reasons, but it's done. And that's the reason why I think the reality is to some extent already much more advanced than we think. It's under different names and it's under different titles. And the question indeed today is, what is the role of the public, what is the role of public funders in order to have a certain monitoring of that and in order to make it more efficient, because there are still a lot of public money which is going into the research and development which is still necessary. That's at least an humble trial from my point to answer your question. Anyone wants to say something? Yes, please.
Yes, concerning the where to invest, if to invest somewhere. As far as the demand of forest-based products is growing, it means that the products will be produced somewhere, and it's better to produce the products here in Europe, where the standards are high and criteria are very, very high for sustainability, and not in the countries where the standards are not that high. The other thing is that if we can compensate the fossil-based products by bioproducts, it still helps the global warming issues. Those two aspects, at least.
Herr Goebel?
Just from a business perspective, of course, we would wish if there was more, say, fundamental drivers which would make these bio-based products even more attractive. But the experience we have at the moment is that we do not get any credits for having a simple bio-based product. We have to be innovative. We have to be as efficient as the incumbent solution, if you like, the fossil fuel-based solution. And that's a challenge we have because we have to invest in R&D. We have to come up with something which is at least as good and not more expensive than the existing product, and that's a challenge. We think there are two answers to that. One answer is to focus on specialities, i.e. we focus, part of our products are targeting markets where there is no solution at the moment. For instance, as I said, we focus on the salt enhancer. There's a salt market, of course, but and this has nothing to do now with fossil fuels. But just to give an example of how you can focus your developments into attractive niche markets or specialty markets. We try to come up with a product in that market which is huge, but where we don't compete with fossil fuel-based products effectively. And secondly, there are industry like mining, where we would hope that, for instance, a cyanide ban, as we have seen it in several countries, particularly in Western and Northern Europe, if this was more widely used, I mean, if this was more widely, the ban was more used, or if you like, then of course a bio-based product would be much more attractive from the start. But the general theme is that we have to be efficient, cost competitive, and we have to be quick. And that's also a problem for a company like us, because as you mentioned earlier, the investors need to have time. And we were developing programs and processes and products where development takes time and registration takes often a couple of years. So that's the other challenge we have, but this is what we need to face.
And we are now already in the middle of the second round, and I'm starting it with the challenges now. And you'll have a chance of asking your question later on, sir. So, Giulia.
So I think that the challenges can also, be an answer to your question, because as you said before, what they are asking now to Bioeconomy is to be in real short term, competitive, efficient, sustainable, and in a very, very short term with very few supports. By using what we fear is that we think that we can change, we can do this by using exactly the same model, the same rules, and the same approach that we have in the past, because we think that it frightens us to, the uncertainty of the future. So we prefer to rely on the previous, on the old rules. But this is not the case for this sector. So what we really think that is important is, as it was said before, to have a strong role of the public policy makers, because they really design the Europe that we want to be. They can set the scene. They can set and develop coherent measures for this sector. I really like what the former Prime Minister of Finland said. We don't have to fear regulations and legislation, because in some cases they can be really a boost for innovation, a boost for growth, and we really need a work and a new way of thinking of that. So two things for us are really important. This sector requires really huge investment, and so it is important, and we are really, happy about the discussion of the last week between the European Commission and the European Investment Bank to try to rethink the way investors invest in this sector. We require a long-term investment. It is really important to de-risk this investment And maybe we have to think about a different way to think about the return on investment. So a huge work on this side. And another one is on the policy, on the policies and legislation. These products are new, are innovative. We are really working very hard to develop them. And sometimes we have the feeling that while we are working on that and while there are policies pushing that, there are some other policies, there are some discussion at European level that even don't consider these products, or even more, sometimes they hinder these products. So we think that if we think the bioeconomy needs a systemic approach, we must work with a systemic policy approach on this sector. So my last message is we have to act fast. Otherwise, Europe will be a wonderful, fancy lab able to produce world-leading technologies that will be scaled up abroad with the benefit both from social, economic, and environmental benefit abroad.
Thank you very much. Frank, you have to add to what you said already?
Yes, shall I just speak on challenges or already on just the challenges now? So yeah, just to give an example of a company like us going to the capital markets, small company, small team, and you face the regulatory hurdles of being listed at the prime standard in Frankfurt. That means starting with a prospectus, starting with a paper which is 400 pages thick, with 200 pages of numbers, with 70 pages of risks. And this is the selling document for our equity story. So that is, in a way, quite odd when you think about that this only talks about risk and not about opportunities. But that is the way, that is effectively the hurdle you have to take. That is the way it works. So I'm quite glad that I now heard that there are, talking about now how to improve things going forward, that the prospectus law is going to change and make a relisting or a reapproach to the capital markets easier once you have established yourself at the capital markets. That's a big step, and the preparation of an IPO is a 12-month period, right? And you start your preparation at the time when you're not quite sure how the capital markets will look like in 12 months' time. So we have been through 90%. And we saw the capital markets, going down for every week. We were coming closer to our proposed launch date, and this is just a challenge where I think this is demand and this is normal drivers, but it just shows it is challenging to do this. It is doable, and I would think that people who are thinking about this should not be squared off or not to be too shy. We need more positive examples of companies doing that. I mean, as you mentioned, we had been, I think, the first biotech business going public in a 10 years time horizon in Frankfurt. So we need more of those examples, and this can be eased by regulatory changes, make it more easy for companies like us tapping the capital markets quite early in the process. So we are still a company having losses because we invest in our product developments. And of course, that's for investor. We got questions like, when do you go to pay dividends? This is not the right investor for such a business. So this is another topic. You need to find the right investor universe. And lastly, I think such investments need to be more attractive going forward. And their politics can help and I'm very glad to hear that there's a new product coming, like a new investment platform, new investment product, which is probably supported by government support, by co-investment, by tax credits. So all this will help making investments going forward. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges we face, that we have so much. I went to the equity forum last week. We met 31 investors in 2 days, huge demand, but most of the guys said, oh, well, your daily trading is too low, I cannot invest. So there need to be other ways for those investors who would like to invest, and through specialized products, for instance, to make money available to growth companies like us, who are in the interim phase of having a listing but not being or a big player already with big cash flows, with big dividends. So the phase in between, there we need support on different levels. On the level of the investor, that investors get tax credits for investments like in UK, or on the company side, that companies get R&D credits, or to have these special tools and special products. That's my...
Well, thank you very much for your very clear and open hints and practical proposals. Teresa.
Thank you so much, Chris. I think that the question on the elephant of the room was a good bridge between the two approaches. And I think that it is true that there is no answer. I mean, when we look into the long-term goal that we want to achieve in order to know what future we want to build, we always realize that decarbonizing the economy can be made up to a certain extent, much more important extent of what we may think, because it's not just a technological problem, but at the end, there is always a kind of black hole where we put carbon capture and storage, great biomass, whatever, up to 50% of the... I mean, there are things that we don't know yet, and this is why it is important to keep this dialogue between researchers, academia, think tanks, business, public players, and so on. I think that that's important, and that also explains why there is such a big pressure on the you as representing a new industry or a new investors community, because we need to face this transformation, avoiding the mistakes that we made in the past, sometimes very recently, and sometimes coming from this very same sector. And I think that that's important. Probably it's a question of a scale in the process of learning how to do things. But let's think of the soy feeding industrial cattle, but having very important consequences in terms of deforestation. Same for palm oil, quite practical for many things, but then importing deforestation also in Europe and other big Western economies, or biofuels that have got some good stories and have also got some bad stories to say. So I guess that it is unavoidable, and it is very important to be very self-critical and systemic, and keeping a systemic approach on what you are proposing whenever you identify your business strategy for the time to come. I guess that this is part of what we will be seeing in the years, in the next years. People willing to ensure that where they put their money, now they say that we are going to divest, we are going to put our money elsewhere, and they are looking where they are going to put their money. But this is a core money. By definition, it is always a conservative approach, where you put your money. So they will be seeking into the type of mistakes that they want to avoid, the industrial scale of something that they don't know yet what type of consequence may have. And in this context, I guess that they will be looking into two different things. Is this going to drive our money into a new kind of stranded people, stranded territory, stranded industrial options? That's one thing. The second thing is to what extent it is really ecologically sustainable. That's something that comes more and more in the context of new financial products, such as green bonds or other type of new blending solutions that are coming up. And to that I say that there are good things that help into the learning process, but also in the convincing process. And that deals with transparency, sound assessment, disclosing, so reporting, compulsory reporting on what it means, how you assess your risk, and how you understand these things. Maybe in the meantime, up to the moment where we know what to report, and this becomes compulsory, it is good to keep this non-compulsory, voluntary approaches to explain what you do, but also to demand some implication from the public players, because I think that there is a very important role in bridging the different scales coming from the public players. So how to reorientate the public procurement at scale, how to try with these blending processes that may come from these learning platforms that are being launched. But I think that being convincing in terms of how you assess the multi-target approach is not just unavoidable, but probably helpful, because you have a good story to say, to tell if things are properly designed.
Thank you very much, very helpful. Pentti, you have the last floor.
Thank you so much. So I'll try to be brief. Concerning the challenges, I think it is more on the communication and information side. We have the engineering side in a good shape. If you are thinking about an investment or considering whether or not to invest in bioproduct factory or so, you have to be sure that you have the customers, you have enough people willing to buy your product. At the other end, you have to have enough raw materials, information on raw materials, and you have to be sure that you get the raw material. You have the logistics for raw materials and products. I think this side is fine. We can manage with that. But something we have to develop is to tell this to public, to people. We have to communicate before the investments, during the investments, and after the investments, what we are going to do, what we are doing, and what we did. And it is precise information, understandable information that's needed. And we have modern, sophisticated tools to tell people. We saw a very good example presented by Mr. Wallenberg this morning, the video, and that's something we need more. We need 3-dimensional modeling, we need virtual reality, other type of tools to manage forests so that people understand what we are doing, how forests look after the operations, and so on. So communication and information, that's the key thing.
Thank you very much. We have time for 2 questions for the audience. Yes, please. And then, or maybe 3. I take liberty in simply doing it. Shortening your time for lunch.
Antti Asikainen from Luke, Finland. I'd like to ask the question concerning of the size of the bioeconomy. We are about 1 to 10 compared with the fossil or non-renewable business. And in the bioenergy is about 10% of the energy mix globally. So do we accept that we are always the midget or the dwarf, and there is the giant that is about 10 times bigger? Or is there any chance to really grow in scale globally so that we could represent maybe 50% of everything that is being eaten, produced, consumed on this globe? Or do we play with that 10% more smartly, but never growing bigger than that?
Well, for me, I don't know. I really don't know. And we can have aspirations, and we should have them, but I really don't know. But nevertheless, if we are going to have 10% of the world production in chemicals, the chemical production all over the world is dramatically increasing, if we like it or not. You know, if we keep that 10, 12, 15% in the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that would be wonderful, frankly speaking. Don't forget, the chemical revolution took more than 100 years. And we have now, in the 10th or 12th years after the Bioeconomy was launched by Commissioner Potočnik in 2005, at least in Europe. Anyone who wants to comment? Yes, please, Franz.
Just to add a bit of a positive spin, if I may. So I guess smarter guys have come up with a study saying that today, when you look at the chemical industry, which everyone is aware of, is pretty big, growing very slow at 4%, looking into this industry, looking into the share of bio-based chemical revenues in this industry. This has started some 5 to 10 years ago at whatever 5% or so, has grown to 10%, but is expected by 2020 to be more in the category of 15-20% of that. So every 5th euro, for instance, will be a bio-based product within the chemical industry. So that is showing how this opportunity is real, i.e. it's transforming industries. And there are other examples, more specific examples, because I'm always a guy coming from the practical element of things and from the real business side. I mean, we have customers saying that by 2020, they won't use any fossil oil-based products or ingredients or colorants in their food products. So there is a need to come up with solutions. Again, I'm repeating myself, but those solutions need to be all natural, bio-based, and so that the customer turns around this product and sees no e-numbering at all. And this can only, it's only us who are able to come up with solutions there. And by making those statements, I think it's a real reassuring message that there is a real transformation ongoing, and we won't stay, that's my view, we won't stay in this 10% dwarf category, hopefully, at least.
Very encouraging. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for the nice speeches. And actually, I'm Ilpo Ervasti from Aalto University, from the School of Science. And actually, in the previous session, there were two aims came through, that the amount of welfare will be increased in the future, and on the other hand, the amount of virgin raw materials used will be reduced. How should the investors take into account these two contradictory tasks shortly to be able to make them true and combine them?
Thank you. To be smart. That's the answer. Anyone who wants to comment? Maybe from your side, as a big state investor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, smart is a very good answer.
Anyone else? Last question? Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Madis Tilga from Nordic Council of Ministers. Excuse me for my nasal voice. I have a question about education. I think to a large extent the world as we see it today is the result of our education system. Our PhDs, engineers, masters, according to the knowledge at the time, this is the result, actually. Do you see changes in the education system? And do you think that it's enough only to introduce bioeconomy master's program, some specific curriculum in the universities or other type of schools? Or do you think that the sort of holistic values should be mainstreamed across the curricula in our education systems? Thank you.
That's a very tough question, a very complicated one. Anyone who wants to say that? Otherwise, I'm going to comment that, because I'm in the appointment commission of the Technical University of Munich. We just have appointed 8 new professors for bioeconomy and chemistry in Straubing, and I can tell you that opened my eyes how the reality really is. But please, you wanted to say something.
Giulia.
Okay, Giulia.
I can tell you the experience that we are having in Italy, but I think that can be, view in a general way. For sure, we think that we need an holistic approach in universities, since bioeconomy is, it talks about value chains. I think that we need to change the way we train and we learn at university, not too specific, not just as a professional in one disciplines, but we must learn to understand, to talk, and to develop projects with other disciplines and sectors. What we are doing in Italy, because we know that it's not very easy to change this approach in schools and universities. From one side is try to open a dialogue with schools, with universities, open the doors of our plants, of our research center, in order to work together and to really see and collaborate on, a practical point of view on what production is and industrial research is. And the other project that we are running with university, with 4 different universities in Italy, with the first bioeconomy master in Italy, where universities, different universities from the south of Italy and north of Italy, collaborate with industry, with bank, in order to train people coming from scientific sector and economic sector to learn to be player, researcher, and manager in the bioeconomy sector.
Thank you. You want to say something?
Yes, because I think that this is going to be my last opportunity, I guess.
You're right, you're right.
I think that you are right. The educational systems are a reflect of values, and we need other values, other skills, and other techniques. And I think that this challenges all of us as societies in order to facilitate this transformation. But at the same time, we know that we don't have time to wait till the next 2, 3 generations come to solve the problems that we have created. We need to play in a different, quick manner. So it's not just on this type of business that the pressure is, it is also on the public institutions and governments that can handle, facilitate, fasten this transformation. I connected to the values issue because I think that it is very impressive to say, someone used that picture in the previous panel. How many times you've heard in such an enthusiastic manner about an encyclical? I think that that touched every single person in the world because of the values that stress the commonalities. And I think that this is very important. We are in this shifting time where we identify that there are new commonalities that need to be anchored in our economic and development and societal context, and we need to phase out the previous ones. So yes, we need a new educational approach, but I'm very sorry to say that we need to stress that the transformation needs to happen much faster. And this is why I'm a bit surprised. Maybe because you organized this panel as first opportunities and then challenges, I don't have the impression that we have the capacity, or I haven't felt the enthusiasm that this room is in a position to express. I think that you represent much more the type of new values and commonalities than what we are seeing elsewhere. And of course, we don't have all the solutions, but I think that when Eskoa was saying before that we need to be a much more, not offensive, because offensive may sound a little bit aggressive, constructive, proactive, is a very important message. Of course, it is challenging. Of course, there are many things that we still don't know. Of course, we need to be multi-target and systemic and efficient and sustainable and all of those things. But I think that you have got collectively a much more reliable approach to all these challenges than the traditional players compared to the challenges that they were facing. So I think that that's quite a positive message that we need to stress.
Very good. We have to come to an end, I fear. Or it's finishing. Yes. Okay. Good. Oh yeah, well, she's the master of ceremonies. I'm sorry. So let me sum up for 1 minute. It's time indeed to act, and things are happening. Things are happening because there are now a lot of efforts underway for having a new wave of platforms in which we are linking European efforts. And that is one in the area of financing, as I said, and I hope I hear a little more this afternoon from EIB about that, about the thematic investment platform where there might be the solution. There's a lot of money which will be available, might be a solution to help in the various aspects of funding for PE, private equity, for people or for companies who wanted to be listed, as Frank said, for private investors, for private funds, and also for debts and so on and so on. So that's the first step. The second one is there was a big call last week on the Commission to have a platform on communication. That's what Pentti very clearly spells out. We have lacks, all the strategies which are in Europe, you know, they always say we need new ways of communication, of funding, and of cooperation, but no one tells us how. So that is a good chance of this conference to set some pieces of practical proposals in order, how are we going to that? So we have platform on funding, on investment, then on communication, and there's a third one. There's a big effort underway to have a platform on education. We have about 25 universities in Europe already who have master courses, and we have 2 on bachelor courses on bioeconomy. But each university is doing what it wants. There are no standards, there are no competitive edges, they don't exchange, they don't even know about what they are going to do. Sometimes they have just the name circular, like in Italy, and you know, it's a jungle. The Commission had in 2012 a conference on the soft skills of the bioeconomy. And since that time, nothing has happened. And that's going to change, John Bell told me. You know, so this conference gives a good impetus now, you know, with the investment we have. That's not only investing in money, it's investing in people, and it's investing in thoughts and ideas, and I thank all the panel members for helping us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good
And a big
appetite.
thanks, of course, to you, Christian, as well. Thank you so much for your input. Thank you all. Now, I know many of you didn't get the questions you wanted in there. Just bear with me just a second, guys. You will have time in the next session after lunch. And the great news about it, just carrying on from what Christian says, is our next session after lunch is about investment. So we'll be able to get some good answers, hopefully, there. And after that, we're going to have a quick, almost like talk show about communication. We've been hearing this from many of you this morning too, the messages not getting out there, people are not understanding. So we'll hear from The Economist and from BBC just what we can do about it, and also talk to one of the key players in the industry. Enjoy lunch. We will be starting promptly at 1:45. So 13:45 lunch just downstairs where we had our coffee break. And please, please, looking at the investment opportunities in the industry. So it'll be a fascinating afternoon. I look forward to having you all back here. Enjoy your lunch.